So in this video, I'm going to demonstrate how to VNC or SSH into your Raspberry Pi remotely. If you've been successfully completed all the assignments, all the instructions from our configuration VNC SSH session, you can skip this video. Also, if you feel like you're very comfortable with this remote connecting using VNC and SSH, you can also skip this video. Okay, so let's get started. We've been using VNC Viewer and SSH from your Pure OS, but there is an option where you can use VNC Viewer from your Windows or from your Mac OS directly instead of borrowing from the Pure OS. Okay, so the Pure OS is actually one exercise to help you get familiar with Linux system as well as the Linux terminal tools. So if you wish, if you want to, you can just remove your Pure OS from this point forward because we're gonna use very similar things from Raspberry Pi anyway. So if you search VNC Viewer from Google, okay, and you'll see that there are various download options depending on what operating system that you're using. Here is Windows, here is for our Mac OS. So I believe you can do this safely yourself. So I'm just going to skip the installation part. So assuming that the installation is completed on your machine, I'm going to open my VNC Viewer. So as you can see that it at least many of my Raspberry Pi terminals here. At this time, in order to connect to a Raspberry Pi remotely using this option, your Raspberry Pi should have already connected to an internet. Okay, so this is how my Raspberry Pi is connected to the internet currently, because I finished the configuration on Raspberry Pi. So whenever I plug it to the power adapter, and it's going to be turned on, and it's going to connect to the internet automatically through wireless network. So at the bottom line is, before proceed to next step, you need to make sure that your Raspberry Pi is connected to the internet at this point. So how do you do that? Number one option is, if you're doing this from Samsung 312 Classroom, you need to plug your Raspberry Pi into Ethernet port in the classroom. Or you should have already connected to the WSU guest network and then finished the sign-in process. So you need to do either one of those steps to make sure your Raspberry Pi is connected to the internet. Otherwise, we cannot connect remotely through the internet connection. All right. So for the first option, connecting through Ethernet cable, you do not need to see what's on the screen, right? You just need to plug Ethernet cable to the Pi, the other end of the cable to, excuse me, Ethernet port, and just plug the power and it will turn on. Just give it about 30 seconds. You should be able to see that from here. If you need to connect it to WSU guest network because you don't have an Ethernet cable, or you're doing this from a classroom or anywhere you don't have access to Ethernet port, then you need to use your HDMI USB dongle to see what's on the screen. Or even possibly, you can plug your Raspberry Pi to HDMI supported TV or computer monitor to finalize internet connection process. But that step is well documented in the instructions provided in the previous class. You may just go take a look at the GitHub pages that I have provided. So assuming that you have completed that process, so as soon as you turn on your VNC Viewer, I'm using VNC Viewer for my Windows. As you can see that many of my devices has shown up. Some of the devices I can connect remotely using internet. Some of them I can connect without using internet directly through the local area network. But I believe this one is the one I'd like to access today. So eventually I'm gonna connect to this Pi using IP address. But since I don't know what's IP address, I'm just gonna double click it to gain access through internet first. Okay, so as you can see that this is already being connected to the internet here using Wi-Fi network, and I'm gonna open up my terminal. And please disregard whatever is in the background. Okay, just gonna do host name I. This is gonna give me my IP address for this Raspberry Pi in this particular network environment. Okay, I'm gonna go back to my. I'm just gonna turn it off for now because I know the IP address. I'm just gonna reconnect this using the IP address directly. So here, I'll type the IP address 0, right? And then click enter. And it's going to reinitiate the connection. If this is a first-time connection, if you're attempting to connect to it first time, this is going to ask you to do an identity check. So just click continue. And you remember the password for your Pi. Okay, I'm just going to let it remember it and click OK. Voila, now we are into Raspberry Pi through a much faster connection. So this is it. And you're ready to do all sorts of fun and interesting command, which will be provided through my instruction paper. Okay, and how do you connect it to Raspberry Pi using Windows command tool? So if you remember, you're seeing this, the quickest way to open it, the quickest way of opening this is you press Win key plus R key on your keyboard. Of course, this is for Windows users. For Mac OS users, you can just go ahead and open your terminal tool, and that will allow you to do SSH. Okay. If you are curious about the specific command, instruction has it, or I'm going to demonstrate later. So to open this, Win key plus R, and after this is opened, you type CMD, hit enter. That will open a Windows command tool. All right. So at here, you can just do SSH. Pi is your username at, which is your IP. And it's going to ask you the same question. It's going to do identity check and then type yes and type password. Now we are in. Okay, now we are in. So this concludes the video. I hope this helped you understand this process slightly better. Thank you.